Welcome to Fat Chicks on Top. This podcast contains frank discussions about the body, sexuality, and occasionally uses swear words, which may not be appropriate for people under the age of 18. This podcast also uses facts, statistics, and mathematics, which may not be appropriate for liberal arts majors. And this podcast relies on science and reality, which may not be appropriate for evangelicals. Welcome to Fat Chicks on Top. You are here with your host, Auntie Vice, and it's good to be back. Happy Pride. And I am super excited. Today I have Miss Mix Pucks Aplenty on the show. They are one of the most influential burlesque folks in the country. They were rated in the top 20. In fact, you're number 16. They have been deemed the Michelle Obama of burlesque. They're just amazing. I followed them for a long time. They do such cool work. So we're going to talk about FatCon. We're going to talk about burlesque. We're going to talk about all of their organizing work because they are just a force in the world. Welcome to the show.
I am so glad to be here. Yeah. So technically, I am the 17th most influential burlesque figure in the world, and I've been in the top 20 now for 3 years in a row, which is really wild to me as a Black, fat, disabled, non-binary, very queer, high-femme individual, right? That they're just like, oh yeah, okay, sure. I mean, people think burlesque is very like body positive, and there are still a lot of people dealing with a lot of internalized fat phobia, and we still see that a lot in like the casting for like major shows and major events. There's still kind of picking more straight sized people, so it's kind of like I'm on this list. It's amazing, but also like it sometimes doesn't equate to like actually getting booked, which is wild.
It is. It is. And one of the reasons I love your work is, my experience in the burlesque world is that you're allowed to violate one norm, right? You can be fat, but you have to be white and able-bodied. Or you could be Black, but then you have to be straight-sized and able-bodied,
Yeah.
right? And you cross all sorts of spectrums here, and it's fantastic.
Absolutely. I came into burlesque like almost 8 years ago. I was doing a lot of volunteer work at the Center for Sex Positive Culture in Seattle, which is our local dungeon and kink club. And the late great Elena Gabosh asked me to help with planning a fundraiser, and I'm like, let's do like a cabaret kind of thing. And so I met a bunch of burlesque people, and I've always loved to dance. I've always loved to move. And so they encouraged me to kind of create a little burlesque act. And I'm like, this feels good in the body. Sure. Yeah. And so I took lessons with Miss Indigo Blue based in Seattle, Washington. And I thought, okay, I'll get this out of my system and I probably will never do it again. And here we are almost 8 years later. I produced 2 burlesque festivals and and have gotten to travel all over. Haven't crossed the pond yet. Haven't been over to Europe yet, but I'm hoping to cross it off my list this year.
That would be amazing. So when you're getting in there, especially as somebody who doesn't come into this as a bendy 20-something, right? A young white, how was it getting on stage the first few times?
Your first time, I was lucky the first time I kind of dabbled in this burlesque thing. It was to an audience full of kinksters, so they're just like cool. And I did an act that was very like, it was, part burlesque, but mostly it was it was like an impact scene between me and one of my exes, and both of us are high-femme, so it was just kind of like this whole situation. So I got to kind of have the best of both worlds. I got to kind of strip and hold court. And that's what I call it when I taught people, and do these impact play scenes. I'm holding court. I love playing in public, like in public dungeons and things like that. I get fed the same kind of way I get fed when I'm on stage. That energy exchange between the people that are watching and can hear the oohs and the ahs and like, what are they doing? It's very similar to being on stage. And so I feel really blessed. I cut my first burlesque act was kind of, it got to marry those two things together. But like the second time I performed was part of my recital with Burlesque 101. And it was very nerve-wracking. I was one of the bigger people in my program, and I'm definitely not flexible. I am the first to tell people, like, if I end up on the floor, go ahead and turn the lights down, fade to black, I'll roll off stage. We're done here. So it was a lot of it is like I had to learn how to hold my own on the stage in my body, knowing what my body's limitations were. And so I'm deeply known for being very expressive on stage, being able to emote very well on stage and just hold space. I do a lot of slow burns. I want people to have to look at my body. I like making people question lots of different things about themselves. I mean, I definitely love creating a queer panic. That's really helpful. I love that magic. But I also like people to kind of have a moment to face their preconceived notions about what a fat body is. And so being able to be on stage and hold that space and take my time and I fuck people and tease and titillate people. Like my mission in life is to make one cis het straight dude in the audience have to go into his therapist the next, the following week and be like, I need to readdress how I think about attraction. It's a very powerful thing to be all that I am and then make people lean forward in their chair as I perform. That's the goal. I want to move people either physically or emotionally when I'm on stage.
In the burlesque community, with you've clearly been very well received, but when you come out into the wider audience and after the show, what has been the reaction you get from folks?
You get a mix of I like when other fat folks approach me after a show and you just have these beautiful moments where like there's no words said, there's hand holding and there's a lot happening between you. Or, a fat babe comes up to you and they're just like, thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me know what's possible. Like that stuff is beautiful. What I get a lot is straight size people. Oh my gosh, you're so brave. I could never. And I'm like, yeah, bitch, you could never. You literally could never. Like you could never. Telling someone that is in a body that you find to be a challenging body, that they're so brave it's not the compliment that you think it is, you know, at all. And so there's a lot of that. A lot of you're so brave. I could never do this. Like, I wish I had your confidence. It's never about the talent. It's never about how I actually made them feel, right? It's kind of this backhanded, you have joy and I don't understand why you have joy. You have this platform and I don't understand who told you that you could have this platform. Like, like, what is so special about you that you get to be here entertaining me and I paid money to see this? That is the underlying vibe when that kind of spills out of someone's mouth. I'm not received well in spaces that have that have deeply preconceived notions about what a burlesque body should look like. So usually those are like corporate gigs. A lot of plus size performers don't get booked for corporate gigs because they're booking for the male gaze. What I really like about the majority of burlesque that I get to be a part of is it's actually created for like an AFAB gaze, like, like a side female birth gaze. It's definitely created for a very queer gaze. Cis het men are very secondary to what is even not even secondary. It's like tertiary. No one really cares. In a lot of the spaces I get to perform in and get to produce shows in. I really I could give two shits what a man thinks about my body and my art and what I'm doing. I'm more deeply invested in that that queer or that person in the back that is questioning things, and they get to have an epiphany moment of like, oh, I like this, and I want to continue to question this, or all this is reaffirming to my queerness, or this is reaffirming to um my sexuality or my gender or lack thereof. Like that's where the juiciness is.
So you bring up the male gaze versus the AFAB gaze and the queer gaze, and those are all very different, right?
Hmm.
We focus a lot, at least in academics and scholarship and stuff, around the male gaze and how that shapes things. But the queer gaze does not translate into the same way. So do you want to talk a little bit about what the queer gaze is?
You know, I with the queer gaze, I feel like I'm still formulating what it is. I love talking about this. I love concepts and ideas, right? And I just know that I feel like with the queer gaze, it really is coming from a place of I don't know if I want to be them. I don't know if I want to fuck them. And maybe it's a little bit in between. I also think it comes from a place of like admiration, right? Of like I admire I admire the queerness that I am seeing reflected to me as someone in this audience, right? I also think there's a little bit of like community element to this. Like the queer gaze is like, is this community? Yes. Nice. So like I think there's a little bit like there's a lot of these different pieces in it, but I really feel like the queer gaze is this ongoing conversation. I joke a lot that like I don't know when other like AFAB folks are flirting with me, all the time. Just like I don't know how to flirt with them, and they don't know how to flirt, and I don't know if they're flirting with me. And this feels to be like almost a very like kind of almost a universe. I have felt has been like a universal phenomenon for femmes that like femmes or what have you, right? And I just started dating an AFAB person, a non-binary person who they're like, that has never been my experience. Like I know when I'm being flirted with and I flirt aggressively and I just was like, oh, I just thought you and I were just pals. Just pals being pals over here. And like, just like, oh, what I thought was kind of more of a universal, you know, AFAB queer experience is not, for some folks. I'm just like, oh my gosh, teach me your flirting ways and teach me how to be able to identify whether or not this person that has been eating me out for the past 6 weeks is just being really friendly. They really like my sparkling personality.
Well, and that I think that there is something that is both universal and uniquely non-binary queer in that, because I have been out since I was 14. I am 50 now, and I have never been able to flirt with women. Like when I found out lesbians used to give each other broccoli before, like you could be out publicly as a sign of like I like you in a romantic way. I'm like, can we go back to that? Because I could give somebody a broccoli.
Absolutely. Like, yeah. I mean, I remember one of the first dates I went on with a woman. I was like just tormented about what to bring. It's like, do I bring flowers? That feels like such a gentlemanly thing to do. And that's not really necessarily my vibe here. And I'm going back and forth about all this. And I showed up with slippers. I bought this woman slippers. And as I handed her the bag, I'm just like, I just want to make sure that your feet aren't cold. And I just felt so awkward and silly. And they open up this gift and they're just like, what a, what a weird but fantastic gift to give someone on a first date. And I'm like, flowers seemed weird. Like it's very, very awkward. And I think also like being fat and queer is fascinating. I feel the queer community, as it continues to grow and shift, and we like kind of lean into like what is it to be queer? There's just a lot of fat phobia in like LGBTQIA community, right? And so that has also kind of always been the fears. Like I'm in this fat body. I want to be with. I want to like be with vulva havers and okay, what's happening? And then and then having personal issues with like, well, I don't like how my stomach is hanging over. And so like I'm not sure how I'm that's gonna be received by, you know, this AFAB person that I'm with. And just I've had more body image issues of being in a fat body with like wanting to be with AFAB people than with men. Mostly because with men, especially like cis men, right? If they want to fuck you, they want to fuck you. Like whatever. And usually at that point, I'm just like, I'm just really looking to get boned down and call it a day and send them catch and
Mhm.
release, send them off on their way. There's just something inherently more vulnerable about someone that has similar parts to yours, and then you're like, and mine are just like much bigger with this body. And so that has been my journey in a fat body, like at least over the past like 6 years or so, of like body acceptance, and also like realizing how much of that has been affecting my ability to connect with AFAB people. It's a fear of, well, they're not going to want my fat body on them, right? Or my stuff is just it's too much bigger than their stuff, or whatever it is, right? And so that it has been my work of kind of undoing what that internalized fat phobia over the past 6 years. Like the pandemic really helped me alleviate a lot of that. I had a lot of time to sit and think about it, but it's really funny how and when your internalized fat phobia kind of pokes its head. And for me, it's always why I'm flirting with AFAB people.
That's interesting 'cause on the show, we've had a number of gay men talk about fat phobia in the gay male community, especially the cis gay male community. And, that's pretty clear by the types of bodies that are featured in advertisements, but sex, porn, all of that. Um, for folks who are queer and sleeping with women and AFAB folks, somebody in that spectrum, it's less talked about. And so for you, where are you finding support in the journey toward body acceptance as a queer non-binary person? Because there's not a lot.
There really isn't a lot. It's I've been finding a lot of like my support like through this journey of creating FatCon and through this journey of creating FatLesque Fest Northwest, connecting with like other burlesque babes, connecting with kink babes. I last year co-facilitated a like kink and fat phobia workshop with a good friend of mine. And when we had announced we were going to be doing this workshop, people were just like, oh no, 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 no. Kink is really fat friendly. Like we don't we're not fat phobic again, like at all. And I'm just like, okay. I'm like, well, let's talk about like trying to buy fetish wear as a fat person and how it's a special order. And there's like the huge fat tax on top of it. So it kind of pushes you out. Let's talk about how much weight some of this equipment can actually handle and carry. Let's talk about how when you ask a rope top, um, do you have experience tying fat people, and they tell you, oh, it's exactly the same as tying straight size people. And you're like, no, it's not. Like, it's not. I don't even know why you're lying and playing in my face. Don't do it. Or they, if they can't get hard, they don't want to tie you, right? And the list can go on and on and on. And so this idea of like where do you find support? I have found it like through like unfortunately having to create these things and realizing that the people that should be in these workshops getting this information so that they can do better aren't showing up. And so community and people looking for community end up showing up. And so that's when you end up finding those connections and stuff like that. It's really unfortunate. You end up kind of preaching to the choir in some cases, but you end up finding amazing community that way. So I've been really fortunate that like through femdom community, surprisingly has been deeply queer and a really beautiful safe haven, at least up in the area that I am for non-binary and trans folks to kind of land into. So I found some really beautiful community in there. Again, when we started this FatLesque Fest Northwest back in 2023, just this cross section of community that came together for this to happen has created a really amazing support system of like, hey, is this a thing that you're experiencing? And also, I continue to be ridiculously surprised at how many AFAB folks involved in burlesque are gay as hell. Just gay.
Oh yeah.
Like, so gay. Like, gay, 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 right? And you're just like, oh, so you're out here doing this beautiful high-femme burlesque act that someone might think is actually for the male gaze. And it's like, you haven't touched a dick since a Bush has been in office. Wonderful.
Love that line. So you've brought up so much stuff I
I
want to
know.
talk to you about. So let's talk about being high femme. You are non-binary,
Yes.
and people often associate being non-binary with somehow this obligatory androgyny.
Yes.
And you
Oof.
and I both fall into the category of being very non-binary and high femme. So for you, what is high femme if it's not a gender identity?
Oh, I've seen high femme is a queer identity. Being femme is a queer identity. I always say that being queer to me is like, it's not just my sexuality, it's my politic, it's my aesthetic, it's the way that I move through the world. And high femme is this additional signifier of that queerness. And I mean, I think that I fell into a high femme mostly because of how just clothing, right? Like, it's hard to find I think it's really hard to find gender affirming clothing in the things I want. Like I would love to be like a dapper high femme, like, and it's really hard to find the stuff or find it in my price range. So I've leaned really into I want to be comfortable as much as humanly possible, and skirts and dresses are very, very comfortable. But yeah, my high feminist, I think also just comes with a lot of like how I do my makeup, the wigs that I like to wear. I like to wear really bright, beautiful, colorful wigs as much as humanly possible. I have a shaved head most of the time. And I also feel like my most high femme and my most queer with this shaved head because it's like that I'm wearing the big long earrings to really I'm over accentuating my makeup. My love for makeup runs deep. There is unopened boxes of eyeshadow palettes hidden in various parts of my office and bathroom, probably in my bedroom, like everywhere. Just like I have my little emergency pockets of makeup, and I think it's also the way that I kind of interact with the world around me and my partners. I'm polyamorous and I have 5 partners. And there is something about being this non-binary high femme and expecting chivalrous behavior. I live for it. But there is like an over the top, there is almost a caricature of femininity that I like. I like the performativeness of that as part of my identity too. So it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to wear combat boots, I'm going to wear the combat boots that are baby pink and covered in rhinestones. And I'm going to wear this cute baby pink beret with cat ears. And we're just going to go on about our day with a shirt that probably says, like, work their clit and not their nerves. And off into the world we go. And I feel like my high feminist, like, I didn't realize how high femme I truly was until I started dating another non-binary person who is on a very dapper kind of they have like a they have a really cute kind of fuckboy vibe to them that I'm just really into with like this kind of like dapper look. And I have never felt more high femme next to this person. It's like a really weird queer wedding cake kind of vibe when we're together. We kind of naturally like to coordinate our outfits and stuff like that. They love their velvets and their jacquard fabrics. And, they're always just like, what is the theme of of today's outfits? And I'm just like, that is the gayest shit I've heard. Yes, outfits, we needed to have outfit themes for today. But I think it's really allowed me to truly embrace, like, I always identified as femme, but recently really have started identifying as high femme because it was really pointed out to me that like this is the way that you move through the world.
So high femme, especially for those of us who came out in the 70s and 80s, we're always very thin white dykes. So that's not you. So where do you find your inspiration for high femme as a non-binary black bigger bodied person in the world?
A lot of my inspiration actually comes from like fellow just fellow black femmes and black women. There is a beautiful burlesque performer out here named the Goddess Brickhouse, and I just love how she carries herself. And so there's just like that I I really kind of aspire to kind of like a Janelle Monáe kind of vibe, like in color pattern and things like that. I used to say that I really wanted to dress like Audrey Hepburn. Like that was kind of like my weird like style icon for a really long time. And someone's just like, how, like why? I'm like, it was just simple lines. I think it was so simple lines. And then a lot of my other inspiration really comes from just like being in the burlesque and drag scene and just seeing the fashion that comes out of there is just amazing. But I feel really fortunate that a lot of it is just instinctual. My mom was a model before I was born, and into like my early toddler time, my mom was also an esthetician. So I've grown up with like makeup and skincare being like top priority. And my mom was very big on like dressing well, looking nice, do not leave the house without your eyebrows penciled in ever, kind of thing. And so there's a lot of this like, it wasn't like how to be a lady. That's not the vibe. It was how to be like this artful version of yourself, I think is how my mom really was just like, let's be the most artful us. And so for her, it was her makeup was like this art medium and the texture and color of the clothes. I don't really have a relationship with my mother at all anymore. She's very homophobic. She's all the phobics, all the isms, which is wild. But I think that a lot of my high feminist comes from kind of her flair for the dramatic when it came to hair, makeup, and fit, out in the world. And so I think it's really funny that a cis het woman, black woman, has been like the most influential in like my high feminist. Yeah.
So with the high femme as your gender expression, to put it in kind of the current vernacular of how we just delineate things, what does being non-binary mean to you?
I've never felt particularly masculine or particularly feminine. I have always felt extremely extremely pucks my whole life. I am me. And and I just and me is has always been very chameleon like in some ways, depending on who I'm interacting with and what people's needs are for me. So knowing what my role is in the life of the people around me. And sometimes those roles require various different aspects of who I am and might require more of this kind of mothering, nurturing kind of human. And sometimes it kind of needs more of this kind of tough love kind of daddy vibe and sometimes so there's just kind of always been this kind of push and pull of like whatever I'm vibing with a person is like what these personality like the personality traits of me that become more prevalent or more needed for the function or role that I am providing in someone's life in that moment or what have you. And so I didn't really know I didn't the first non-binary person I met was about 8 or 9 years ago. They were 18 years old. I just started college, and they're like, "Hey, I'm non-binary," and my initial reaction is just like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what even is this?" And just listening to them talk and how like self-assured they were, and just like what it was and what it meant to them. I remember this just initial feeling of like anger and rage in my body, just anger and rage in my body. And I thought, for a few months, I thought I just did not like this person. Like, and that's not what that anger and rage was. That anger and rage was like that I had no clue this was an option. And this, this 18-year-old is going to get to live their adult life, clear in their identity. And I feel like I'm back at zero now. And so anger and rage wasn't at them. They just happened to be the person delivering the news. That anger and rage was just like, this has to exist outside of the context of this 18-year-old. This is not like a new concept. And I am pissed that I have been gate kept from this. I'm pissed that that this has been buried in such a way that this is fucking news to me, as a 28, 29-year-old person, like, and it still took me some time. I came out as non-binary as I was building my burlesque persona. And I had that aha moment of like, that's what that anger and rage was. I remember sending this person a message years later, like when I came out as non-binary, I sent the message and I'm just like, I need to thank you and apologize. And like, and you can do with this information as you see fit. But thank you for being the first person to let me know that it's okay. That's just okay. It's just okay to be. And it's been a road, but like, I remember this anger and this rage of society kept this from me, that the world has kept this from me. The world is keeping this from other people.
And we've got politicians still trying to do that and eliminate us.
Yeah, they can eat shit.
Yeah.
What a wild time to be alive.
As you've come into a non-binary identity, how has it changed the relationship with your own body?
I feel like it's made me embrace my body a lot more. It's also made me a lot more vocal about like the lack of like access to super cute clothes for fat people. Like I've known that, and I've always been, kind of pissy about it, but I feel like I got even more vocal as I came out as a non-binary person. So I'm paying the fat tax for my kink clothes. I'm paying the fat tax for my burlesque costuming. I'm paying the fat tax in my day-to-day life. I'm like, I'm tired of paying the fat tax for being in this body and trying to find gender euphoria in my kink wear, in like the costume I'm building for burlesque, and in my day-to-day life. Yeah, I think it's also made my vagina more my pussy is more exclusive now, like in terms of like what we're trying to accept and not accept. I always joke that I'm like, I know that sexuality is not a choice, because if it was, there'd be no men in my life. And like I said, I have 5 partners right now, and 4 of them are men. 3 cis het men, and well, they think there's, well, that's not fair. 1 cis het man, one definitely queer man, and then a bisexual man. And then one of my partners, when we got together, they were non-binary kind of femme, and now they are trans man. And so that was like an interesting road to go on together. And so yeah, I just think, man, like if sexuality wasn't traced, none of these dudes would be here. Get out of here. Like piss off.
Yeah, I joke about it all the time because, I was mainly with women through most of my life. And then after my divorce, I somehow fell in love with a straight cis man. And I was like, this was not on the agenda. Like,
Yeah. I remind them all the time how lucky they are to be here. And they know that they're lucky to be here. I say that and people are just like kind of appalled at first. Like, then I'm in a service dynamic with all of these 4 men. I am their dominant. And so like, that's also part of the game, but they do recognize that they are lucky to be here. Cause I'm just like, it's annoying. I'm like, you guys are some of the good ones. Like, just that, maybe that's it, but like, also, I know that sexuality is not a choice because there are so many heterosexual women that I'm just like, the bar
Right.
for men is in hell. It is in hell. And I am so sorry that you're in this hell. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I read about this and it just kind of like it's now in my head after saying this. The Bumble, the dating app, had a fucking swing and a miss of a marketing campaign, right? Where they're just like, celibacy isn't the answer,
Oh yeah.
this whole campaign, and God, did they miss the mark. But like thinking about that, I'm just like, yeah, like I mean, that is definitely how you know that sexuality is not a choice. These women who are, straight, women are just like I am definitely not attracted to women, and it is too much of a risk. I'm getting off these dating apps. I'm not participating in the hookup culture. I don't want to accidentally get pregnant with one of these dudes' babies in one of these freaking states, where I'm going to have to
Right.
carry this dude's baby. I'd rather be celibate. I'd rather just not, and like, it's that is a giant proof. If we ever wanted to have a giant proof of how sexuality is not a choice, like, and it's instead of treating it like the wake up call that they should, but like what the fuck?
Yeah.
These men are doubling and tripling down on something's just wrong with the women. Something's just wrong with the women. Think about the mass hysteria. Like these bitches want to go hang out with bears. Like that is where they're at in their brains. I'm just like,
Yeah.
we do.
Yes.
We'd rather fucking
Yes.
take our chances with the goddamn bear. I see it, I feel it, it's wild. And I think that like as a fat person, especially like in who's, out in the dating world still as a poly person, shit's rough. You think it's rough for you
Yeah.
straight size, you know, heterosexual cis women? It's rough out here across the board for anyone that's even remotely perceived with to have a vulva. And as a fat person, they truly think that you should just be happy with what you get. You should be happy that they're willing to even touch you. And I'm like, nah, fam. I go home to two men at night.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't have to be happy with your scraps ever.
Well, and there's this perception that if you're fat, you should always be happy and never give pushback. And it's challenging, right? And to create something where you're going, no, I have standards, I have self-respect. People react in a lot of ways. What's the type of reaction you've gotten when you've been on the apps or out dating and said, I'm just not interested in you?
Oh, I get called a fat bitch immediately. Immediately, you fat bitch. I'm like, did I just magically become fat? Because this is the first I'm hearing about it. Like, it's so weird how you can go from being something that someone that they are flirting with and trying to make air quotes a genuine connection with to the flip on the dime of you fat bitch and no one's gonna want you and blah 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 blah. It's wild. But it's definitely a quick jump to the lowest hanging fruit, and that is that you're fat, right? I was at the airport in Panama last year. We flew down to Panama so I could be a part of a festival down there. And I went with one of my partners who is he's pretty straight size. I like flying with him, especially internationally, because he's got like thin hips. So I could just kind of lap into his seat. It's great. He likes it. I like it. And he's like, a fairly good looking, blonde hair, blue eyed, kind of all American boy kind of vibe, right? And me being who I am, like, is a whole thing. And so we're standing in line to get through security, and these two white dudes just like cut in front of us, like just very blatantly cut in front of us. And I wasn't quiet about it. I'm like, we're right here. Like, we're literally right here. Like, and one of them turned back to me and called me a fat bitch. And I was just like, I'm sorry, you said what? I'm like, you're gonna have to say it again because I didn't understand you. And he goes, you fat bitch. And I'm just like, I'm like, what are you, like 50? Like, this is all you have. Like, aren't you like, you're an adult, like you're solidly an adult, and you're gonna call someone a fat bitch because you got caught doing something wrong. And so me and this guy are going through security back and forth at each other, and he starts mooing like a cow and stuff like that. And I'm just like, are you an adult? I'm like, I couldn't imagine as a woman wanting to actually sleep with you. So I'm just wondering, like, when's the last time you got fucked that you didn't have to pay for it? And so he's just like not knowing how to deal with this. My partner, unfortunately, he gets flagged by security. I don't, and this guy doesn't. As we're like going back and forth with each other. And then he goes, I could never imagine anyone fucking you. And I'm just like, right. I'm like, dude, I have like 5 partners. This is whatever. And so unfortunately, what ends up like not unfortunately, what ends up happening is he's still kind of doing his shit. My partner gets finished with security. He comes up and he gets he hears a little bit of it, and he just like wraps his hand around my waist and gives me a kiss on the cheek, and he goes, like, I can't wait till we get home so I can like fuck you. And I'm like, oh, you have a great day, sir, kind of thing. And off we go. But like, it doesn't matter who you're with or anything like that. If these folks want to fat shame you and go through their whole shit. But like, this guy felt so confident that I wouldn't defend myself. He was definitely shocked that I was defending myself and going toe to toe to him with, and then thought I was out here alone in the world traveling too. It kind of left a sour taste in his mouth. But it's just like, Chad with the receding hairline, wherever you are at in the world. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Fucking grow up. Like, it's so weird. Fat people existing pisses off fat phobic people like nothing else. Us just sitting there being unbothered and breathing pisses them off. God forbid you fuck around and smile and be happy. Oof. I don't like it.
I love just posting videos of me eating on the internet because it enrages them.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how can you like food? How can you brag about eating?
Because food is delicious. Food is delicious. I'm a hedonist, okay? I like nice clothes that have a nice texture to them. I like food. I like delicious food. I love delicious food. I love delicious experiences. I am a hedonist. I would be a hedonist even if I wasn't fat. Food is delicious. It is meant to fucking be enjoyed. People who eat for just sustenance alone, like, and that's actively what they do. I don't get it. And I'm like, I wish you luck in your endeavors. But there is something so magical about like the first bite of like a piece of like hamachi sashimi, and the texture of that raw fish and how it kind of melts in your mouth. And I'm like, that's a sensual experience. And I want to eat that off of my partner's body badly. And I just want to turn it into a whole fucking thing. Like, food is meant to be enjoyed. And yeah, these folks who just hate fat people, like, God forbid you eat. God forbid that you do something that they don't think fat people should be able to do. I've seen more fat people do the splits than straight size people in my entire life.
Yeah.
Like all the time. And I think this is actually a really good segue into FatCon.
I was just going to bring that up because I fucking think FatCon's brilliant. So let's talk about it.
Okay. So in the middle of the pandemic, so back in into 2020, 2021, a good friend of mine in Atlanta, Rula Roulette, who is an amazing burlesque performer, producer, and she runs a burlesque academy called the Metropolitan Dance Studio. She's great. And I reached out to her and I'm like, we should do a plus size virtual burlesque show because nobody's doing it. Like, there was all these other virtual burlesque things happening, but there wasn't one that's specifically about fat folks. And she's like, yeah, let's do this. And so we're putting this together, and I started realizing that like the last like fat thing I got to be involved in was back in 2018 when we had the world's first all fat burlesque festival called Bucks and Blaze Burlesque Fest in Austin, Texas. And that's produced by Ginger Snaps and Riri Sincere. And it's my first burlesque festival. And honestly, it kind of ruined me because like I haven't like up until we did FatLesque Fest, I hadn't really experienced anything like this. And as we're putting this together, I keep thinking, okay, we need to do a festival. And so there's been other like big plus size, like big shows, a couple day shows, but we're like, we need another festival. Let's do it. I'm like, okay, I want to do the festival. And I am a person that it's really hard for me to kind of half-ass. And so some friends of mine before the pandemic started, we're going to put together like a 1 day, like plus size event with some workshops and some entertainment and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so I reached out to them and I'm like, okay, what if we did a convention? And they're like, what? I'm like, let's do a convention. And like during the day, we have the workshops. And then at night, we do the burlesque festival. And it's all in house. And they're like, okay. And so 2022, we started looking at hotels and venues in the like greater Puget Sound area of Seattle. So we're looking outside of downtown Seattle. We're looking at some of the neighborhoods. We found a place we really loved. And we started, talking about pricing and like looking at all the stuff. And I think they got a little sticker shock. I things cost what they cost. Money freaks me out, but things cost what they cost. And I think like the food and beverage minimum was like $30,000 or something like that. Like, it's big.
Yeah,
It's
that's
big,
really
big.
high.
It's high, but they're giving you the whole ball, like all the ballroom space,
Right.
right? So
Right.
but it's really scary. And so it kind of sputtered out. And I was just like, okay. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the burlesque festival in 2023. And if it goes well, I'm going to bring this con thing happening. So we actually launched a lot of our, the FatCon is coming, I think in like mid to late 2022, maybe even earlier. So it's kind of been out here for a minute that we're going to be doing this. And then, yeah, FatLesque Fest Northwest was born. We did it 3 nights, all sold out, standing room only. And it was just such a beautiful experience. Like, yeah, fuck it, let's just do a convention. We toured a bunch of places in downtown Seattle. We found the perfect place. All right, we're going to do FatCon. FatCon's going to happen during the day at the hotel. FatLesque Fest is still going to happen in the evening. How do I do this? I've worked for I've been volunteering with Kink Fest down in Portland, Oregon for 8 years as the merchandise director. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago with the newest executive director that they had there, that I kind of learned like what actually went into putting this event together. Because I would order my stuff for the merch. I'd show up, I'd sell some t-shirts and kind of leave. And this was the first time I felt like kind of invited into this process. And so after kind of seeing the process, I'm like, oh, this is how we can make this thing happen. And I brought in a really great team. So I brought in Candace Frank, who is the owner of Chub Rub Clothing. Brought in Lori Collins, who is an amazing visual artist and draws fat babes in tiny underpants. Kind of my right hand and go-to person that I do a lot of my burlesque production stuff with is Stormy Chance, who's an incredible burlesque performer. She's known as the solution specialist of burlesque, and fuck, she's so good at what she does. And then we brought in Vixen Valentine, who's an amazing burlesque producer as well, but also has a huge background in theater and film. And so we're like, yep, that's what we need. And they also used to be a part of a convention team as well. And then we brought in this amazing human, Affiliate Dagger, who is one of the production managers of the Seattle Erotic Arts Festival, which is a multi-day event. So a lot of us had multi-day event stuff under our belt, but still you don't know what you don't know. And our goal was just really simple, like at least 30 hours of programming, bring in some good keynotes. We're gonna have a fashion show with a brunch. We're gonna have vendors. Let's go. Let's see what happens. And it was, like we weren't necessarily well received at first. Like people were excited, but there's also, I think a lot of us fat people are used to being burned. Like we're used to investing and getting our hopes up and then kind of getting left behind. Okay. And so they're used to getting burned. And so we were just like, okay, we get it. And then, there's a lot of talk about like how expensive the event was and things like that. And, it is what it is. I I recognize that like not everyone can afford $250 to go to an event, a 3-day event, I get it. And a lot of that is, it was our first year of like securing sponsors and trying to figure out ways to kind of subsidize that stuff. And so kind of my go-to response was just like, next year, if you have suggestions on how we can find more sponsors or grants to subsidize this, I would totally welcome that. And that's not me being an asshole or anything like that. I welcome more ideas of how we can do these things better. I'm not willing to compromise on the venue location kind of thing. I think I want it to, it needed to happen at a really nice hotel with a convention center because of the accessibility of it. I want people to be able to roll out of bed, slap on what they want to slap on, and go down to the convention space and be able to go, where they don't have to go outside to access it or anything like that, right? So you pay for those conveniences, you pay for those access points. That's what it is. But we were fairly successful. We sold out, which is lovely. And then something really weird happened leading up to the event. About a week before the event, we went viral, in not the best way. We went viral because conservative talking heads picked us up. We were briefly connected to an amazing fat liberationist human named Jay Bay, who does a lot of fat travel stuff. And she had gone viral because an article just came out about fat travel, and people were acting like this is the first time in the history of all ever that they'd heard about this shit and lost their minds, not realizing that both of these policies with Alaska Airlines and Southwest are pre-existing. They're not new, it's just new to you. And so because of her connection to us, we ended up with a lot of additional backlash. And so a lot of digging into FatCon and stuff like that. We started getting a shit ton of news requests for press in those days leading up to it. A lot of Fox News shenanigans, a lot of Como, which out here is a conservative radio stuff. And so we had to be really picky about it and kind of figure out like who was legit. And it was really disheartening because we had sent out a shit ton of press releases, a shit ton. And none of these more fair or balanced organizations even remotely were interested or reached out to us until the very end. We got one. It was Converge Media, which is a Black-owned media company out here in Seattle. And they ran a lovely article a week after the event. And so like we ended up getting contacted by the Daily Mail. And the Daily Mail's like, we want to send this one out to take pictures. And we're like, what? Not interview us, but take pictures. And we're like, no, you are not welcomed here. Person showed up anyway and tried to get into the event on three separate occasions. We ended up calling in for additional security. We had our local chapter of Dykes on Bikes showed up for us. So love Dykes on Bikes. And then the hotel security was amazing. Like they were like, we monitor internet chatter surrounding any events that are happening in our space. And so we know what's going on. Like, that's great. And so we're able to keep our attendees safe. We were able to keep ourselves safe, right? We did have groups of young men showing up to the event, trying to get in so they could see what they could see. And so we, had them escorted out of the building. I think we had like 3 or 4 groups of men throughout the weekend. And it was like young men, like under the age of 30, just wanted to see the spectacle. And I did 2 interviews, and one of the interviews was with a woman who used to be fat. She had lost a lot of weight. And I don't think the interview went the way that she thought it was going to go. I think she came in with a lot of preconceived notions. And I think I fucked her up a little bit, and I'm really proud of that. Where I was just like, like I think what is more harmful are people that spit, disparaging remarks about people that they've never fucking met just because they can't see themselves wanting to have sex with a fat person. And like that's more harmful than someone actually being fat. And like that's not great. And one of the questions that she asked me was like, well, what if someone wants to talk about like losing weight? Like, will that be accepted there? And I'm just like all of our workshops are listed on our website. Like if someone wants to come here and have like a whole kumbaya about how much they hate their body and they want to lose weight, they would not waste the money to come to this event to do that. So, you know, it was really beautiful. We had Tigress Osborne as one of our keynotes. We had a lot of Butte, who is an amazing burlesque performer and producer based in Oakland. And she was actually part of Leonard Nimoy's Body Project. A lot of folks may not realize this, but Leonard Nimoy was a photographer and has a book all on like plus size bodies. It's a beautiful book. And so a lot of it was part of that. You know, we had some really amazing invited speakers. We brought in Saucy West, who's also based in the Bay, and we brought in Fierce Fat Femme, Angelina, just great people. And, you know, at the end of the event, I was deeply pleased. People were happy, people were fed, people were watered, you know, everyone's good. And I was kind of on the fence about whether or not I could mentally and emotionally do it again. It's a big lift. It's a very big lift, but we are. So FatCon 2025 is a go, and it is January 30th through February 2nd. No, January 31st through February 2nd. We have a new venue. Tickets are on sale now. Find that link on our Instagram at the FatCon. And we're just gearing up to announce our keynotes and our invited speakers. So that'll be probably by the time y'all are listening to this, we'll probably have announced our first person. And yeah, ticket sales are already exceeding expectations. The tickets have only been on sale for a week, which is wild. We're really excited to bring it back, and we're bringing on some new team members. There are a lot of folks that really want to be involved in fat liberation, and they're just like, but does it just stop at fashion? And that's kind of a big thing for us, is like, fashion's the gateway, you know, like clothing is the gateway. But we're here to talk about that, you know, fatness in the arts, fatness, you know, in fitness, fatness in nature, fat legislation, how to build fat community. I mean, fat fashion is always going to be there. Like we have a vendor area and stuff like that. But, you know, it's like, I got clothes that fit me and that I love. Now what? Now what do I do? And so that is part of it. And when I was talking to one of our keynotes the other day, and I was just like trying to sum up of like, what are we trying to do with FatCon? Because it's not all things to all people. Some people are going to really love the experience, and some people will be like, oh man, it's not what I wanted it to be. FatCon really is a place for fat people to experience and celebrate joy. It's like, it's really that simple. And I think with something like it being that broad is important, because that could look like many different things to different people. So I'm really proud of FatCon. I'm deeply proud of the work that we've done with FatLesque Fest Northwest, which will be heading into its third year. And, you know, all of this is just, it's still bonkers to me. You know, when I got started doing burlesque, I didn't think that I would be a part of the fat liberation movement. I hadn't even heard of that phrase, you know. I was still just, you know, still processing body positivity movement and how it had kind of gotten, you know, commandeered by straight sized white women that do yoga. I was, you know, still reeling. I feel like I'm still reeling from that, of how that appropriation happened, you know. But, you know, I tell people all the time that kink saved my life. Burlesque has been my compass to find out what I'm going to do more of. And kink led me to burlesque, and burlesque has led me to just this world where me and my Black, fat, queer, non-binary, disabled body, that I can manifest so many amazing and creative things and get to connect with so many people. And really, the essence of all of this work that I do is centered strongly in community building. Like, I would be nowhere without community. And I think that is probably one of the most powerful things about the fat liberation movement, is that fat folks are finding community. We're not just the fat friend in a group anymore. It makes me really emotional thinking about it, right? Like how many of us were the fat friend in our group? And now we are of the fat friends. And it's beautiful and enriching and amazing, but it really chokes me up when I think about, you know, 16-year-old pucks being the fat friend in their group and having to hear people say such horrible things about their bodies in front of me and not even thinking about it. It's wild.
And there's something amazing when you bring community together who is getting okay being in their own skin and the power that that can unleash. And that's why I love following your work is what you're doing is bringing people together and they come. I saw, people who were at FatCon coming out of it and just like, okay, I'm into the next step now. Like I found my people and let's go change the world. And it was phenomenal. And I'm so excited about FatCon 2025.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I'm so glad that people are finding out about it and it's speaking to them and they want to be here and be with us, and that the work is reaching the people that it needs to reach. It does make me really emotional. I cried so much throughout FatCon this year, so much, lots of tears for various different reasons. But one of the overwhelming reasons was just like, it's a place where community can be found.
What are you currently grateful for?
Oh, right now I am grateful for my chosen family and my partners. My health has been all over the place the past year. I was diagnosed with autism, so I'm autistic, and last year I was diagnosed with Bell's palsy and lost the muscle function left side of my face with a very, very busy work travel season with burlesque. And I ran for Mixed Washington State Leather and all of that and the whole thing. And my chosen family and my partners have really continued to come through for me in like just in ways I just didn't think I would ever need, and yeah, I would be lost without these amazing, incredible human beings. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for love that is romantic and platonic and feels like family and self-love. Like it's like family and love. Like it's so healing.
That's wonderful. So, if folks want to buy tickets to FatCon, if they want to follow you, if they want to hire you for a burlesque show, if they want to go to FatLesque, plug all the sites and socials and all that good stuff.
Perfect. Instagram, I feel like is where it's at, right? Like right now, because you can kind of put everything everywhere. So you can follow me at Pucks of Plenty on Instagram. You can follow FatCon at the FatCon. FatLesque Fest Northwest is FatLesque Fest NW. Yes, Northwest NW. You can also send me an email at production@gmail.com at any time. I answer emails fairly quickly. And then you can check out my website, mixpucksofplenty.com. And so I not only do burlesque stuff, but I'm also a BDSM and sexuality educator. I have spoken at the University of Washington, Brown University, Antioch. So it's like if you're looking for someone just to come and talk about poly, kink, whatever, and the intersection of whatever I am at, I would love to. Please. That's my favorite kind of, I love coming to speak at schools and colleges and events. It's fun.
And listeners will have all of those links and more in the show notes as always. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you for being here. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. Have a great day, y'all.
Texas of the world.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Fat Chicks on Top. Please like, subscribe, and review our podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. If we like your review, we may even read it online. This has been an Auntie Vice production. Producer and host, Rebecca Blanton. Audio production by Sharon Smith. Music by David Manga. And more music by Sharon Smith. For more information about Fat Chicks on Top, please visit our website for all things Fat Chicks at fatchicksontop.com.